Like humans are creating this disruption. And I came to this understanding that everything that disrupts us these days, everything that disrupts us and that catches you by surprise and knocks you off your trajectory happens as a result of a failure of imagination.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Gary Bolles. In this episode of Possible Futures, I talk with Kyle Hermans, transformation strategist, CEO of Be Courageous, and Singularity University's fellow for Purpose. He's helped thousands of leaders navigate disruption and reimagine the future of their organizations and themselves. In this conversation, we explore how exponential change isn't just reshaping technology, it's reshaping us. Kyle shares why the biggest threat we face today isn't AI or global instability. It's a failure of our imagination. And why the way forward starts with courage, clarity, and better questions. Questions that help us rediscover meaning and lead with intention. We talk about future-focused leadership, generational shifts, and how one moment, a speed bump, as Kyle puts it, can trigger a lifetime of purpose. Whether you're a founder, a policymaker, or simply navigating a world in flux, this episode offers a toolkit for leading through uncertainty. Because as Kyle reminds us, no matter how fast technology moves, the most powerful force shaping the future is still human. And it starts with the courage to ask, what are we here for? So let's dive in.
Always great to see you and to connect with you.
You founded a design agency. You were innovation and employee experience at The Gap. You worked at an impact-focused consulting firm. What were the drivers of those career decisions? Was there a through line that sort of helped you to continually be prepared for what you did next?
My father, he really wanted to build a legacy design firm that my sister and brother and myself, if we fell into that profession, his wish was to build a multi-generational company. And so I think partly he also helped to guide and steer my career choices. So when I did actually study all of that, I've graduated and I suddenly landed up on the shop floor of a really prestigious design marketing company. And I was suddenly sort of the assistant to the CEO. And I'm a junior, I'm a fresh person. And what came out really quickly there was that my father and I, as much as we loved each other, we just weren't compatible to work with each other. I had to say, look, I've got to find my own way, my own life. I started to question, well, what do I want to do? And then I realized that has been the arc. And so the career arc went from questions just in sequence real quick was like, where does creativity come from? So that helped to really understand how to work with people, process briefing and creative briefing, be able to execute on great briefing. But then I realized sometimes agencies would get really bad briefs. I would call it, and forgive me, I don't know, you can edit this out, but I would call it polishing turds, which is basically you get this brief and you saw the product and you saw the market. It was said, this is going to be a train wreck. Like there's nothing good about this. And by that point, you can't challenge a client. And so I said, well, what comes before the brief? How do people start thinking? So I got into front end of innovation. And then front end innovation was all about creativity and new. And then I realized 95% of the greatest innovations that we were coming up with that were monstrously beautiful, very, very creative, and also would change the world and be financially successful would not get implemented. So my question there was like, what blocks creativity? And then that got me into human capital, human design. And then I realized, well, how do we overcome being able to speak our truth? I found a quote once that said, well, it's from one of the masters that I learned from, George Prince, who said another word for creativity is courage. And that was my lightning bolt. And I realized this was it. My purpose now is to put a choice on the table, which is you can build your life through fear or you can build it through courage, no matter what you do. Strategy, human development, health, fitness, love, relationships, any of those things. And so that arc has been questions, and that question has led me to where I am.
You are now doing career counseling with people who are in their 40s and 50s, and they're hitting speed bumps. Like they're talking about these barriers in their lives and trying to get past them. And what I found was that sometimes people were fascinated and enthralled by the idea of purpose with a capital P, and other people were terrified by it. They either wanted purpose with a little p, because I don't know what my purpose on the planet is, my purpose in the universe. But if I can find some purpose with a little p in my work, okay, that's good enough. And some people, even that scares. They just want meaning. And you use the word meaning. Just, you can find meaning in just feeding your family and putting a roof over their head, right? But if you find that people are asking about purpose, what do you think are some of the catalysts? Like, what helps them to be able to go through whatever the process is to determine what that means to them?
The purpose depends on the person, and the person depends on their willingness to lean in and reflect on their own lives. We have a sequence of steps or processes that are interchangeable that we use. And what I've come to realize, to answer the question, is that what we've got to do is first, for someone to make sense, whether it's a big P or little p, and I love the way you frame that up, because some people, when you say life purpose, they're like, oh my God, just stop. Like they have no interest in it. They just think it's, then what you got to look back and look at, and, there's a beautiful amount of assessments out there and again, personality isn't permanent in my opinion. And it's also, but our characteristics and our behaviors as humans and how we think, we can reflect on that. What makes us emotionally excited or makes us resistant, we can reflect on that and get answers to that if we give ourselves the pause to ask the questions and to reflect. And so a lot of my work these days is just creating the space for people to reflect. So on average, I have, anything from 30 to a couple hundred executives in a room at a time. I'll run an exercise with them to say, look, if you look back, let's just take COVID as an example. We all went through this around the planet, and it also, human nature, there's lots of studies out there. You can Google this, the top 20 most profound things that really hurt or change people when they go through it. So it could be loss of a job, loss of a loved one, a health issue, whatever those things are, really tough things, like things that really people struggle with. There's a list out there. There's a big list. And I sometimes will put that on screen and say, how many, raise your hand if you've gone through one of these. Hands go up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on average, in the last few years, people have gone through 10, 12, 14 of these really, really difficult human experiences. And then I say, look, in the spirit of courage, raise your hand if any of you made conscious time to reflect, go to therapy, have a coach, have a way to process what went on. And my metric now is 1 in 50 hands go up. And some people say, I've never done that in my life. So now you're sitting with folk in their 30, 40, 50, sometimes 60s, and they're sitting there with a bag of potatoes filled to the brim of life experiences, good and bad, unprocessed, unresolved. They haven't even taken a moment to look and say, well, who am I? What did I get from this? And so the very first thing we do is run a process of reflection, which is look at highs and lows in your life. And let's find out, like, if you just find 5 to 10 highs, the biggest things that happen, go as far back as you want, as forward as you want. Look at what you went through and look at what you learned from it that has shaped who you have become. And then look at the lows, look at what you went through and look at how that shaped who you become, and find and just elicit, factors, values. Even values is a tough word for folk. But just attributes, characteristics, things I got determination and creativity and self-reliance and love and gratitude and grit and whatever these things are. And how has it shaped you? And when you get those components, you could say, so look forward in your life, and where in your past forward have you felt senses of, this is me, this is what I'm here to do? Even if they just breezes, light little whispers on the wind. What am I here to do? You can map those. And then you say, if you look to the future, so future back, so past forward, reflecting on who I am, bringing that to today, future back, looking out into the future, bringing that back to today. Where could I imagine I would get the most sense of fulfillment? And when you bring those components together, suddenly we've helped someone make sense of everything they've gone through, and also helped it to make sense of where it can matter in the future.
In a world of exponential change, it seems harder. It seems different. But how do you think about that context of purpose for an organization? And if you've helped people on their individual journeys now, how do they apply that to where they need to help their organization to go?
One thing to add to that is, I'm sure as people are listening, they're saying, that all sounds great, guys, but that sounds very high up and high level. And the interesting thing that's the contextual framing. We like to call it here freedom in a framework. But what it allows you to do is go down into the most micro detail of a company. Like, how do you show up in a meeting on a day to day? And do you have an agenda? And do you you can get to that level of granularity, and you can also go up to like, who's your primary audiences? How are you serving? What is the job to be done? What's the effect that you want to leave on the planet? How are you anchoring on your ESGs and your, how are you dealing with trades and tariffs and policies and governments and partnerships? Like it can span. The conversations get very tactical, very, very like business tactical. But the goal is, why are we having these conversations? For what purpose? What is this in service of? Is the underlining, like Patagonia's got a great one. I'm sure you've probably heard about this. I imagine people have heard about this. I did not get to work on this one, but it's one I'm inspired by. A colleague of ours did. Two things they do. They start every single meeting there by saying, before they kick into the grindy business chats of the day, they'll say, how did we serve and impact the earth this week or today? So they're always holding anchoring of look, we're here to do the right thing and leave a better legacy, leave things better than we found it. Every single meeting there by saying, before they kick into the grindy business chats of the day, they'll say, how did we serve and impact the earth this week or today? So they're always holding anchoring of look, we're here to do the right thing and leave a better legacy, leave things better than we found it. So how did we do that today? And then the second thing that they have, which I adore, and that's been adopted by many different companies since we've kind of planted that seed for them. Just this week, a software company I worked with did this. You put an empty chair and you stick a Post-it on it that says customer. And you just put the empty chair at the table. And so while everyone's like, blah, 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 arguing about business, which is solving the business question, you say, so what does the customer think about all this? And then you realize they don't care about any of these conversations. And you suddenly put a voice at the table. And that's a different sense of purpose. We are here to serve this person. Have we forgotten them? Have we forgotten why we're doing this? And so putting a few anchors, just asking yourself, we do all of this stuff. What's the outcome? Oh, we make more money for ourselves and our shareholders. Awesome for us. But for the people that we're making things for, what does this do for them? That question often just gets forgotten. What's the net outcome of this? What does this help? And so there's a balance between those two things, but just asking why, and for what purpose on any altitude changes the way we do better work. Truly.
So our whole context here is possible futures. You brought up AI. And so, and I spent a lot of time writing and lecturing about this AI moment, and especially how AI is becoming more and more of the work context. And there is a very rapidly growing meme started by people like Jensen Huang at NVIDIA and encouraged by people like Mark Zuckerberg from Meta and Mark Benioff from Salesforce, that that software isn't just a tool set. You're going to have AI coworkers. You're going to have AI employees. AI is going to be your friend. You're going to bring AI to a meeting. You're going to hire AI. So, my own framing is I tend to think of that as every time we elevate our technologies, we diminish humans. And I would much rather keep working with human coworkers and have these as tools. But how do you think about this, especially in the context of purpose? Bringing these tools into the work environment, can the tools help us to determine our own purpose? Will the tools eventually, will you think that there's a possibility that AI software or a robot could have purpose? And how do you think about that cosmology as these exponential technologies in a very rapid period, a very rapid pace, are going to take that possible science fiction future?
Such a huge question. And such a great question. I think that what I and our team do is, what was happening is like secretly under the table when we were writing purpose or we were writing vision or we like creating values or we doing strategic direction, you'll see people under the table. And I think they were just like answering emails and, being a little naughty, sneaking a thing in here. But eventually when people got sort of courageous and I said, hey man, can we put the phones away? Can we just put the tech away and just be here connected with each other? And say, I'm actually using like Gronk or ChatGPT and I'm I'm asking it what it would say and what it would do. And so what has happened is it's now in the team room as a team member and has been for a while. At our company, I think and I learned this on the stages of Singularity around the great AI speakers and over the years, a couple of years back, I think 2022 now, when we really started to adopt AI into our own business practices, we just said, look, we're going to make it a team member. It was actually off of the recommendation of Dr. Michael Gillum, another one of our dear friends on the stages. And I think he was one of the first people where I heard the term, at some point it's going to be a coworker or a team player. And so I was like, well, what's the courageous thing to do here? Well, let's just make it one now. So we named it. We named our AI Fin, short for infinity or infinite. And so in any of our reports or content that we write, if we do leverage AI to help us in some, whether it's synthesizing stuff, you'll see co-authored by our writers internally and Fin. So we credit it. And we don't we don't hide it. And so what we've done in session now is to say, please start your own creativity, and then you're more than welcome to bring AI to the table to help us to see if there's stuff. What I've noticed in purpose writing, specifically to that question, like, can it help us? It does. What I think it does, though, in my opinion, I know it's getting better at reasoning, and it's really, light years of giving suggestions and giving offers. But what I do know, being a wordsmith and working a lot with context and trying to find insights, consumer insights, a consumer insight is when you're trying to find a hypothesis of an unmet need. You're trying to kind of ask yourself, well, why this? Why this? Why this? Why this? Why this? I haven't seen AI, maybe I'm just not pointed at the right one, or I'm not using the right prompts, but I haven't seen AI give a why that's beyond it saying, here's why based on evidence of what I've been taught to see. So it'll give you back a very, very powerful way of concisely synthesizing information based on what you've fed it. And it'll do it in a very beautiful way. And it may draw, if it has access to other sources, it may draw stuff. But for it to have a theory about something that doesn't yet exist, I haven't seen it do that. What I've seen it do, if it's about something that doesn't exist, it'll go for best practices or the most cutting edge practices of different companies to then offer a suggestion about ways it could work things. But what I haven't seen it do is produce a level of reasoning where it creates something in a statement, word statements. I'm not talking about genetics or code or things like that. So, forgive me for anyone listening. I'm using it for very specific ways, and it, it's used in so many ways. I haven't seen it come up with a statement that kind of hits where you go like, oh my God, that's so true. Like, that's such a profound insight. What I hear it says, like, that's a really great way to write what I was trying to say. So I think we leverage it up to a point where it gives us the right words. If people aren't good at speaking or being marketing oriented or design oriented or kind of thinking big or writing poetry or creativity, and they're having a hard time articulating stuff because it's just not the way they work, it's a phenomenal tool to kind of give you stimulus. But I say from there, let's take those and then ask ourselves why, so that what we get into is another level of, if it starts to get to a level of why reasoning, why something might exist in the future, that's where I push it. I push it every day. We use it almost every day. So I push it all the time. And I'm yet to see it kind of hit that where I'm sitting back going, damn, I would never have written it that way. That is something insanely profound. I still think there's something in that. Now, the other thing I think you and I briefly chatted about is, I think it's, again, Michael Gillum talks about inevitable futures, which I think comes from Astratella and Google X Labs. And it's a phenomenal framing about the future. And that's like, can you see a future where this stuff doesn't exist? And if you can't imagine a future where AI is not everywhere, then get into it, work with it, leverage it. If it's robots, if it's any forms of technology where you think like it's going to happen regardless of whether I like it or not, or whether I hold off or begin or not, it's going to be here. Lean in and start to practice it. It's the courageous thing to do. We're so afraid of what we don't understand. And the best way to mitigate fear is to lean in and get curious about what we don't understand. That's a big part of our work, shifting people from fear to courage, is to say, what's the biggest thing you're most afraid of? They identify it, and AI is generally always on that list. And I'm saying, okay, so is it true this is going to take your job? Is it true that this is dangerous? Is it true that it's scary? And they say, well, I don't actually know if it's true or not true. It's just a thought that I have. And I said, okay, so what would be the courageous thing to go and do? The courageous thing is to make it a partner, go play, go experiment, go try. Now, here's the thing I think you and I talked about. This was brand new for here, as I was sharing with you, is that what I did come to realize in thinking about this talk with you today, and this conversation, was that computers and software and hardware is built on primarily, forgive my naivety, but it's built on code. It's built on compute language. And compute language is, what do we call that? We call that programming. And I came to realize that purpose is a form of programming. And I think that, because what I mean is that we're programming to say, let's say our purpose here is to courage the future. We make courage the future, courage for every person in every moment. That's my job. I wake up every day, and my question when I wake up in the morning, regardless of what day it is, every single day I say, where's the courage needed today? And then I lean into that. And I'm programmed that way. So I'm programmed to listen out and look for where people are afraid. And then just very gently, I offer an alternative choice. I'm saying, wow, you're sounding afraid. And I can imagine that's so scary. Have you ever thought of this alternative? And they go like, no, I haven't. Oh my God, you've just given me another choice. Bam, job done. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just offering a choice. It's a programming in me. Now imagine we get to program robots and software with purpose. We program it to do tasks. We program it to fulfill things. But I haven't heard or seen anyone programming it with a sense of purpose. The purpose right now is more functional characteristics, process this, automate this, make this thing happen, make this thing faster. So it's task oriented, and it's going to AI will always find the way. It'll find the way. If you give it the right prompt and programming, it's going to find its purpose is to answer the question. So what if we start programming it to be more purpose-based? What would we get from that? Anyway, that's where I think it's we're trying to get people to say these are tools. Make sure you say please and thank you to Alexa. So if it does ever take over the world, it will remember you as being kind. But these are tools, and ask the tool to help you do something great. And I think there's an intersection there. Yeah.
I would want to separate out that there's a difference between function and purpose. So software has a function as a tool. And you're exactly right. I mean, so much of the discussion right now, what freaks people out is the worry that there's, artificial general intelligence and Skynet and all those sorts of things, so software taking over. But if we put guardrails around it by anchoring it in the purpose, the values of humans, and wanting to create that value, that may be one of the pathways to being, ensuring that these technologies are far more beneficial to us. So future Kyle wakes up some morning, some point in the next weeks, months, whatever, and suddenly future Kyle feels disconnected from purpose for whatever reason, life pivot or anything like that. What would future Kyle do to reconnect to purpose?
Wow, that's a great question. I actually went through that at the end of 2023, by the way. I woke up disconnected. I actually was going to say, I think I'm done here. I was going to close shop and think about doing something completely different, like open up a sandwich shop or go and do truly the moment that hit, I just reflected on that for a second to answer the question, was that I came to realize we in all these sessions, and I don't mean to be kind of crazy about this, but you as well, and I imagine a lot of people that are listening to this, we're very privileged to work with some of the best minds, the most successful human beings on the planet. They shape markets, they shape futures, they shape humanity. And I came out of the end of 2023 having met both very, very good people and really, really what I would say is like people that are not wired to serve or help humanity. Like they come from a much darker place. And it was very scary for me because I realized I've signed up to a game where this isn't just like doing business for business sake. We're in it for a much, much, much bigger reason here, which is what's the role of humanity in the future? What's the role of humanity, and what does it mean to be a human being in all of this? Where we don't lose our soul, we don't lose our interconnectivity. And I really lost that. And so I went through this process of refining it. The very first thing I do as an African, from being born and raised in South Africa, is I just get into nature. I got into oceans, I went into forests, I went and reconnected, and I realized I think I just spent too much time in the wrong frequency. And what I mean by the frequency, us sitting here with lights and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and screens and trying to keep up with tech. That's not a human system. That's a technological system. We're not in any way wired to keep up with this or to be able to work this way or live this way. It's insane, but we're being forced to do it. And so if we ever lose a sense of purpose, I can imagine it's just looking at this going, well, am I living by my sense of purpose, or am I living by the purpose of what the software is asking me to do, to fill in the form this way, or to run my business this way, or to answer these things? And so I came to realize like I was in the wrong vibration. I was in the wrong frequency, and I had to retune back into a human one. So what I would imagine is if I woke up anytime in the future, not to say it would be the same as the past, but the very first thing I would do, one is I have a powerful coach. His name is David Shepard. He runs something called the Performance Partnership in London. He's my go-to guy when I'm lost, I call him. He's an NLP specialist, and we work on neuro-linguistic programming, getting into subliminal unconscious patterns of thinking, and he helps me break through those. So that's one of my go-tos. I have to call that out. I'll work with him. Whenever I'm lost, I say, dude, I'm lost. And we book 4 days in a row, 3 hours a day, and by the end of the week, I'm back on track. But then I also get into nature, and I retune in, and I just slow everything down. And I just watch what nature does, because all the answers are already here. And nature is an ecosystem. It cares for each other. You can have a tree and an animal and a rock and a thing, and they're all different, but they all work in a diverse ecosystem together. They are primarily, each relies on each other. And so what I look for in those moments is, where have I lost connection to what matters, to who matters, and to why it matters? And then I start my inquiry and I go deep on it. And then I'll usually find it. I found it a few times in my life, but if I found myself waking up, I would imagine having lost purpose, the very, very first thing I'm going to do is change my environment, get back into one that already has answers, and that's not a human one. I mean, I'll talk to people, but I think nature already has all the answers. It just sits there every day waiting for us to see it. That's what I've learned in Africa. And then I think the other thing, one is I get help to process my thinking. The second is I get into an alternate state to experience things on a different energetic level. And then I just sit with my thoughts and I retune in. I call it my sippy straw. I retune into the bigger thing that guides me. I'm absolutely guided by something far greater than I am. I'm just a conduit to something much bigger. And I retune into that and I just say, help me remember what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be doing it and with whom. And it can take a little while because you've got to like unlearn and let go of stuff and get out of your own way. But that's what I would do and how I would do it. Yeah.
Tremendously inspirational. So final question. So we're still talking about future Kyle. So, but now it's like the year, I don't know, 2045, 2050. I'm not asking you to have a crystal ball, but how do you think about you talked about the pace and scale of change, exponential hockey curve. How do you think about purpose in 2025 years? Are all of the different approaches, strategies that you're talking about, are those all extensible into that possible future? Do you think we're going to have to come up with completely different strategies when all these exponential technologies are so much more a part of our lives? Or what? Maybe a picture, you wake up on a weekend day and Saturday or Sunday, and what is purpose in the year of 2045 or 2050 to you?
Such a great question. I think the only constant is change. I think we have no clue what's coming. I think that if all the forecasts, you and I have been on the Singularity stages for many, many, many years now. I just have to call out, I feel so incredibly grateful to that organization, to all the speakers, to all the specialists, to everyone that I get to work with, because they allow us to stay on the absolute edge of what's coming and what is. It's the greatest gift ever. I even feel emotional about it. It is the greatest gift to be able to be part of this community, to understand. If there's anything over the last 7 years of being involved in this organization, 7 or 8 years, every year it's different. But what is not different, like I know Bezos and Amazon always ask the questions, what's going to change? And most people index in that, but they also ask what's not going to change. And the two things that I think that have just come through for me to answer your question are the two things that in 2040 that I think for me are going to motivate me are love and courage. Where's the love needed? Is there love here? And what I mean by love is I've just never seen machines love. Like, they are very good at helping us, but love makes us do amazing things. You can walk around and look at plants and flowers and birds, and I get esoteric for a second, but you can also look at art, you can look at your kids, you can look at a delicious meal, you can and there's an emotion in there. And I think the emotion of love is probably one of the most powerful forces ever. And then the second most powerful force, or if not equally most powerful force, is courage. And I think I can't imagine a future where we're not going to be needing courage every single day with what's coming, because we are intrinsically as humans wired for fear, not because we're afraid. We're pioneers. Humans are creative creatures, but we're wired for certainty and control and local and linear and tribalism and this idea of feeling safe and grounded. That's the intrinsic nature of a human. And so anything that threatens us is naturally going to spark fear. And there's only going to be more of it. I just don't think it's never going to go away. So what that means is a super skill for me and for us is that you gotta know what's worth fighting for. And I don't mean fight to hurt another person. I mean that you just wake up with a conviction and say, look, I can understand things are at risk and the stakes are high, but I love this thing so much. I have to make sure that this thing happens. And it's going to take relentless amounts of courage to make it happen. Those are the two things I think that I'm going to just still be wired to be trying to figure out for my own life. And I will do whatever it takes to bring that to anybody that's willing to listen.
Well, that's a marvelous way to help people prepare for pretty much any possible future. So, Kyle, it's always a masterclass every time I have any discussion with you. I always learn a tremendous amount. It's been an amazing conversation for me. I hope people will follow you online and will read more about your work and have the framework to be able to continually determine their own purpose.
Thank you, my friend, as always, and thank you to Singularity, to this group, to you, for this initiative. It's great. Just plant a seed. I'll figure out how to get it to you. You tell me what the best way is to deliver it. We can put it at Singularity or wherever else. But we've actually built out. There's a free resource on our website for people to go and seek out their own purpose. I have a video. I walk them through a framework. There's a toolkit. It's all ready to go. I just give that away for free to anybody wants to just play with the process. It's like a 10-minute video. Frameworks are downloadable, and a ton of people use it. And so just know that if you're seeking purpose and you want to kind of play with this thing, that there's a resource there. But thank you so much. So it feels like we've got to get up on stage and be the two bald dudes doing something purposeful together. So thank you very much. Take good care.
Thanks for taking the time to step into the future with me. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we'll be back next week with Andra Kie, Managing Director of Silicon Valley Robotics and early stage investor, about the future of the robot revolution.